Hey everybody, and welcome back, or welcome if you are new. First of all, thank you so much for clicking on this video if you are a fan of extreme horror, thrillers, and smut. I genuinely think we should be friends. I genuinely think there is a friendship that could happen between us. In order to solidify that friendship, I'm gonna need you to click subscribe, okay? I'm gonna need you to do that. Today, I thought that I would film this chill chat, just casual sit-down video about literally my favorite thing in the entire world, and that is Stalking by Coogie. For those of you who have been around since 2021, you will know that I would not shut up about this series. Every single list where I gave extreme horror recommendations and would talk about my favorite books of that year, this book would come up, okay? Even the troll video where I recommended books for Valentine's Day, that was the thing that happened. It was recently nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards, which was just so shocking to me because Goodreads Choice Awards, damn, that is literally just confirmation bias, serotonin for Stephen King and Sarah J. Maas fans, right? It's like the Goodreads popularity contest. It's literally like putting out a Twitter poll and seeing whatever gets the most votes, okay? So I know that Stalking doesn't stand a chance because extreme horror isn't a very popular genre. It's very disturbing, it's hard to get into, and this story in specific is not something that most people would willingly subject themselves to, which I totally understand, but I still just want to take time to tell everybody why I love this series and this story so much, and why it just means so much to me as a person and an extreme horror fan. And yeah, this is gonna be spoiler free, it's gonna be a chill chat. If I do want to get into spoilers, I promise to warn you, okay? So for those of you who don't know what Stalking is, it's a manhwa, which is a Korean graphic novel, which was written and drawn by this artist named Coogie. What really pisses me off is that this author, Coogie, clearly spent so much time crafting a very intricate, well-researched, beautifully haunting story about trauma and abuse, a horror story, but it gets so much flack because a lot of people tend to romanticize this story, and the story itself never does that. Like, there is no point in this story from beginning to end that tells you, like, hey, this is a cool romance that you should totally interpret as a romance story. No, this is a horror story. But there are some people that ship the two main characters in this, and as a result, people go in expecting a romance, and then they get a story about abuse, and then the author gets harassed, like, how dare you write a romance that is so abusive and toxic? You are doing like the E.L. James 50 Shades shit, shut the fuck up. Like, this is a depiction and critique of a toxic relationship. This isn't a showcase of something toxic framed as romantic. Some of you really need to be able to tell the difference. You stupid bitch! And if you don't, then you're probably not mature enough to be reading this story to begin with, which in fairness does have an 18+ on the cover, okay? So let me just put that out there. So yeah, it's extreme horror through and through, but it's not splatterpunk. It does have bloody scenes and scenes of sexual assault, but it's not this Saw level bloodbath, hostile, you know, human centipede kind of thing. It's an extreme horror about the loneliness, abuse, and trauma of some severely broken people. To many people, horror is still seen as this cheaper or less than form of entertainment, something that exists entirely to startle you like an amusement park ride. And although I am like a huge horror fan, I don't blame people for having this specific image of the genre in their head, because nowadays, horror is just so saturated with signifiers of horror. You know, haunted dolls, ghosts, demons, zombies. Like, every single mainstream horror movie nowadays is just a big studio getting recognizable actors, taking a signifier of horror, splicing in cheap jump scares that can be telegraphed from a mile away, and bam, you have a cheap, soulless exercise in capitalistic cash grabbing. And that sucks. And sadly, that's how I see most non-horror people discuss the horror genre, as if it's only that. And to some extent, I do get it, okay? People shun this stuff because most people will go through their entire lives without having to perform an exorcism on a haunted doll, or getting chased through an abandoned spaceship by a xenomorph, in their underwear, okay? That's something that not anyone is ever gonna have to go through. But the true horror I love, and the ones I find that actually scare me, are the ones that exist exclusively in the human realm. It's the type that mines the depths of cruelty that other human beings would willingly foist upon one another, because ultimately, Killing Stalking is a story about unresolved trauma being weaponized and used to traumatize others. Horror to me is at its best when it is intense, when it's personal. And that's this. That's Killing Stalking. So we follow this young man named Yoon Bum. He's this depressed young man who lost his parents at a very young age. He was brought up by his grandma and his abusive uncle. And after school, he was drafted in the Korean military because, correct me if I'm wrong, fact check me in the comments, I heard that men of a certain age in Korea are mandated to serve in the military. So over here, despite his, handicaps, like debilitating anxiety, he is still forced to serve in the military. And during this service, he incurs even more abuse. Now that abuse is one in the sexual variety. So he is about to get and someone saves him from these people who are going to him, okay? Yoon Bum gets infatuated with his rescuer, and his rescuer, we learn eventually, is this man named Sang-woo. So this infatuation leads Yoon Bum to break into Sang-woo's house. Okay, he memorizes the combination to the door and tries everything out and manages to break into the house. So while he breaks into the house, he's having this little look around. He's like, what am I gonna find here? Am I gonna find anything spicy? And then he hears something, okay? He hears something under his feet and realizes that this noise is coming from the basement. And he says, I'm gonna investigate that. So he goes into the basement and he's like, does this guy have pets? No, he finds the body of a mutilated woman who's all tied up and on the verge of death, because it turns out that Sang-woo is a serial killer. And he's like, I need to get the actual fuck out of here. I'm so fucked. I need to get the hell out of here. She looks at him like, yeah, bitch, you need to get the fuck out of this place. Except if he managed to escape, we wouldn't have a story, and Killing Stalking wouldn't exist, and life would be absolutely more depressing than it is now, and I can't imagine that, so I'm really glad Yoon Bum stayed in the basement, okay? Good stuff. That sounds really horrible considering what I'm about to tell you. So he's about to make his escape, but he turns around and Sang-woo is there with a baseball bat. So he bashes Yoon Bum over the head, and Yoon Bum is like, it's now or never, and he's like, I love you. So Sang-woo's like, the fuck? And now, normally Sang-woo would just kill his victims, but nah, something is special about Yoon Bum, okay? Something is really special about him. So instead of outright just killing him right then and there, he shatters his legs and says, the most romantic thing anyone would want to hear, you will be my prisoner. Yeah, you, down there, this is not a dildo, okay? This is like a back massager because it really helps with the stiffness. Moving on. So he keeps Yoon Bum as his prisoner in the basement, and then Sang-woo tells him that he hasn't killed another man since his dad. So it's like, okay, so you don't kill guys, you kill women. What makes this specific guy so special? Needless to say, something about Yoon Bum has Sang-woo very intrigued. So he lets him live with him under these two conditions. What are the two conditions, okay? First one is he never leaves. He puts like a fucking barrier on the door. He's like, if you cross this line, you're fucked. Okay, dude, you don't even want to try me. And then the second condition is he has to wear these girl clothes and do all the cooking and cleaning. And I'm not gonna spoil or divulge too much from this point on, but let me just say, there is a reason Sang-woo is making him do these very specific things, okay? And it's fucked. Like, a lot, like a huge amount. So this is the kind of story that doesn't merely creep inside of you. It full-on assaults you in the most uncomfortable ways and hammers home the message that the world is a more frightening place than you would ever want to admit. Because behind this valiant rescuer is pure evil. I mean, he's sexy as fuck. And I did do a book tag where one of the questions was, who is your crush? I was like, Sang-woo. I'm toxic, okay? Cancel me. I don't give a fuck. I'm too dead inside to give a fuck at this point, so go for it, bitches. He's sexy, but evil. Evil. Pure evil. That's you stupid bitch! But, there is a huge but, and it's not his. Was he born bad? Okay, you have to ask yourself, you have to wrestle with this doubt. Was he born bad? What makes this so scary is that Yoon Bum is forced to live moment to moment in fear because of what he discovered about Sangwoo at the beginning of the story. And because we know that Sangwoo is a serial killer, every single thing that he does subsequently is like under such scrutiny, and we're like, is he gonna fuck up? Is this the moment Sangwoo is finally gonna snap? It's so fucking intense. Also, he's unable to escape because he's incapacitated. His legs are shattered. So like one little screw up and this guy just can't get up and run away. His legs are fucking broken. He cannot run. He is a prisoner to this crazy man. And the most amazing part about Killing Stalking is that it's told almost exclusively through imagery, which is, that's just so cool to me. So yeah, there's no sound effects, there's no actors, it's just pictures on a page and narrative and dialogue, and it's fucking terrifying. Granted, historically, art has been able to frighten people. You know, imagine being a farmer in the medieval ages, having no access to a TV or cinema, and then seeing this beautiful painting depicting the various interpretations of what hell looks like, you know? Or seeing a painting by Francisco Goya, like Saturn devouring his son, or something that deals with any super disconcerting subject matter. Now, the hell being depicted over here in this art is a disturbing look at the dark and horrifying places a damaged relationship can bring us and the depravity that lies there. And it really bothers me when people say that, oh, I hate this story, it's just a bunch of abuse. Yeah, no shit, it's a story about trauma and abuse. What the f— The horror of Killing Stalking is so effective to me because it places the emotionally vulnerable character of Yoon Bum, a deeply traumatized guy, in a horrible situation. A situation in which his captor, who also has a wealth of trauma eating him up from the inside, slowly tries to chip away at Yoon Bum's sanity for the purpose of eventually breaking him. And honestly, the way Sangwoo toys with Yoon Bum is just so horrifying to me. He doesn't just subject him to brutality, he subjects him to humiliation. And then after all this torment, he starts to give him hope that one day they could eventually fall in love. And he really capitalizes on the fact that Yoon Bum is this extremely depressed and anxious person with deep-seated abandonment issues. And he really dangles that possibility of a relationship in front of him, like, hey, if you keep putting up with my shit, I might just love you one day. And yeah, he just plays on his trauma. And watching him manipulate Yoon Bum and watching the mind games he plays on him, I swear, it's like Kugi, the author, is like playing us, the reader, like we're a musical instrument. Like, that bitch plays us like we are a musical instrument. We have no clue where the story is gonna end up because it's very unpredictable. I had no clue where this story was gonna be going because she sets up so many possibilities and plants so many different seeds of horror. It's just so good. And every moment is just so drenched in tension. The slightest thing that Sangwoo does just puts you on edge. Let me just set this scene, okay? So basically Sangwoo tells Yoon Bum that you can eat here in this house, but you have to eat on the floor. And so the way Kugi draws this scene, it's so cinematic because the way she draws Sangwoo is like this towering, tall colossus, this lighthouse of a human being, and she draws Yoon Bum from like this bird's eye angle of someone small and weak and defeated who has like no chance of escape. And just the scene of them having dinner and Sangwoo suddenly looking at Yoon Bum as opposed to his own food, his pupils being here 1 second and then there the next second, it's like a jump scare. The look in Sangwoo's eyes has this undertone of suspicion and sadistic calculation to it, and you're just waiting like, oh shit, when is Yoon Bum gonna fuck up, and when is Sangwoo gonna use this fuck up as a justification for, you know, lashing out? And because of how horrifying this story starts, like chapter 1 and 2 are just so fucking intense, the author manages to force you into the mindset that we're constantly on edge. And even in the long stretches of story where nothing overtly brutal is happening, these moments are still very much permeated with this creeping, foreboding atmosphere, and these more subtle moments very much do play into the idea of Stockholm syndrome. It comes to a point where Sang-woo has subdued Yoon Bum to the point where he is confident in taking Yoon Bum out. They go out in public, Sang-woo knows that Yoon Bum is not going to be escaping, and so they're in public and nothing bad is happening to the passive eye of someone who is not aware of their situation, you know what I mean? But since we've been following Yoon Bum's emotional journey from the beginning, we have a very different interpretation of what is happening. And just the smallest, slightest shifts in Sang-woo's expressions, or the distinct way that he phrases something in a way that has so much more nefarious meaning to it given what we know since we've been following the story. It's just so fucking powerful and scary. Reading these moments where something could potentially happen is way scarier than the big shocking scenes that do eventually happen. It's like an elastic band expanding and you're just waiting to see when it's gonna snap, and it's just like, oh shit, when's he gonna do it? When's he gonna do it? And it's this underlying tension that traps you in the scenario and forces you to feel every single thing these characters feel. And going back to Stockholm Syndrome, Kugi really demonstrates a very keen awareness of the psychology and triggers behind this condition. Yoon Bum mistakes common allowances of survival as compassion, like just the fact that Sang-woo is letting him eat. He's like, oh, he loves me, he's letting him eat. He misinterprets that in his head. He practically falls in love with him, even though the love is ultimately one-sided because Sang-woo is a narcissistic sociopath who is using him for his own, like, sadistic, nefarious ends. There's no love in this relationship. If anything, it's this one-sided love that will literally go nowhere. Super tragic. Very cautionary tale, if you will. He even feels pity for Sang-woo about Sang-woo's past, because we do eventually learn about his past and do see the trauma eating him up from the inside, and he just refuses to escape. And a mild spoiler, just to illustrate the concept of Stockholm Syndrome, I'm gonna put this warning up here and just skip to where you don't see this anymore. So because Sang-woo dangles the possibility of love in front of Yoon Bum nonstop, when Yoon Bum is given the chance to escape, he actually doesn't take that chance. He actually assists Sang-woo's narrative to the police that renders him unguilty in the eyes of the police and gets the case dropped. And another thing, he also helps Sang-woo commit murder, okay? The ending of season 1, bitch. The fucking ending when he takes the girl home and he's fucking her and Yoon Bum is just there in the closet watching, and Sang-woo knows that Yoon Bum can see what's happening, and he's like deliberately getting Yoon Bum more angry, like, hey, I know you like me, but look what I'm doing. And then that triggers the memory of all the times this girl bullied Yoon Bum in high school, and then Sang-woo like tries to get Yoon Bum so pissed to the point that Yoon Bum actually kills this girl for him. And because he killed the girl, he has to help bury the body. Can we just talk about the scene after that? After Yoon Bum commits his first murder, and he looks directly at us, the reader, with this deeply broken smile. That's when I knew that this shit was a masterpiece. Okay, so the spoiler's over, feel free to unmute me, but now I'm gonna discuss the art of killing stalking, because this art is gorgeous! Beautifully rendered in colored panels. Like, there are people saying that this should have an anime adaptation, and I mean, I wouldn't mind a killing stalking anime adaptation, frankly. I think it would slap. But even though we don't get that, the fact that this manga looks as good as it does, the panels are fully colored. It looks like screenshots of an anime with speech bubbles. That's how good it looks. It's beautiful, but what it depicts is a lot. You get this vague sense of cognitive dissonance because you're like, why is this awful and disgusting thing so beautiful to look at? It just doesn't make sense. I am repulsed. I don't want these images in my head, but I can't look away, you know? So it reminded me so much of Exquisite Corpse. It's like, this is some dreadful thing being written about, but it's so beautifully told. And in this case, it's like that same thing I had reading Exquisite Corpse, but drawn, illustrated. And the most disturbing element in this is how Kugi draws facial expressions. The only other time I saw facial expressions this uncomfortably real looking was probably Blood on the Tracks by Shuzo Oshimi. The ability to draw facial expression is just such a powerful storytelling tool because it renders these fictional creations as real life people with feelings who you've met, who have gone through things that you can empathize with, or who felt things that you have felt. It's the kind of art that tricks you into empathizing with a fictional character on a deeper level. It's something Kugi is so good at doing. And the way she's able to capture little nuanced flashes of emotion that change the entire context of a scene is what makes this feel so chilling. This author is so good at communicating the various different states of mind that these characters are in. And the scene that I point to the most, where facial expression is just so, like, horrifying, is the various flashback scenes, because these flashback chapters feel like nightmares because these characters' pasts are like nightmare scenarios. So you see faces of people in these flashbacks, and these faces are significant players in the trauma of these characters. But despite the fact that a lot of the face is obscured or blurred, there is just enough detail to convey the emotions that that person has. And then out of nowhere, the traumatizer's face is shown in excruciating detail, and it's like a jump scare. It literally is like a jump scare. You see like a bunch of fragments of emotion, and then you flip the page, and then you see this giant face contorted with hate. And without giving much away, the victims in these situations are very young children. And this is horrifying because in the context of this story, it's often tied to the notion that the people we love, parents and guardians and whatnot, friends even, are just people, and just because that's who they are doesn't mean they're not capable of enacting evil. I got goosebumps just thinking about it. And the reason I felt so disturbed was because of how Kugi managed to take these frighteningly intimate moments these characters were experiencing and essentially trap us in these moments with them, making us feel every single thing that they feel. And this author succeeds ultimately at emulating the emotional impact of being trapped in a frightening dream, in a nightmare. And the way she's able to draw eyes, oh my gosh, the way she's able to draw eyes, the way she's able to capture the tortured soul in this person through their eyes, and in that same vein, also capture eyes without a soul behind them. This is talent. This is such freaky talent, okay? And this talent really bleeds into the scares of killing stalking. Kugi does this fantastic job at building tension before revealing something horrific. There's a card game scene that literally is the most intense game of cards I've ever seen played in my entire life. I was shitting myself the whole time. There's also a scene where a detective is searching a house. There's even a simple scene of someone shopping for clothes that managed to scare the fucking shit out of me. As I said before, it's the literary equivalent of a jump scare, but it's less cheap because unlike movies, you can't just fool the audience with a long stretch of silence and then like a sudden jolt, a sudden loud sound. Over here, the scares are genuinely earned. The only thing Kugi had was a piece of paper and a wild imagination, and that's how the scares were brought to us. It's just so fucking amazing. A lot of this story is premised on Yoon Bum's emotional arc, but both characters have very dark pasts and very dark backstories, and because of these dark pasts, this resulted in a very emotionally stunted Yoon Bum and a serial killer Sangwoo. So you have Yoon Bum, who goes through severe depression, anxiety, and has crippling abandonment issues. And then you have Sangwoo, who is this narcissistic sociopath, this psychopath, who uses people as means to his own end. The sex scenes are very violent and very disturbing and very utilitarian and one-sided and just cold. And what is so disturbing about this is that they're heavily implied to be a continuation of certain events from Sangwoo's past. Certain events from his past bleed into these very brutal, disturbing, and cold scenes. And just seeing the connective tissue linking these two things together, it's fucked up, okay? It is just so messed up. But Sangwoo is also very paranoid. He is this evil person, but he's not just this like born evil boogeyman. We see him in vulnerable positions and just see him freak out whenever he thinks that something is outside of his circle of control. And anytime his ownership of Yoon Bum is threatened, he gets so fucking pissed. Both of their lives have been disastrous since they were born because of abusive caregivers in both cases. I don't think there's any love between them. I think Yoon Bum thinks he loves Sangwoo because Sangwoo saved him from getting raped. and he's also very attractive, and Sang-woo only uses Yoon Bum for his sexual pleasure and very dark, like Freudian emotional support, if you know what, yeah. Yoon Bum grew up being neglected by everyone. His abusive uncle told him he was gross and disgusting and will never be loved by anyone, and him, and he's very socially awkward. He was bullied in school, he was an outcast. So when Sang-woo says that he won't leave him, he just latches onto that. And the mere fact that he is willing to stay makes Yoon Bum gaslight himself into ignoring all the abuse and latching on to the mere fact that he won't get abandoned. And another spoiler, so just mute me, and then when you no longer see this, you can unmute me. We find out that Sang-woo killed his mom. And we find out that Sang-woo kills his mom over and over again through the women that he kills. And he uses Yoon Bum as this proxy mom who he gaslights and emotionally manipulates. And Sang-woo does show dependence and emotional vulnerability, but we never know if Sang-woo's facade is actually cracking because this story is told from Yoon Bum's point of view. So we're like, is this genuine vulnerability on Sang-woo's part, or is this just expert emotional manipulation from a sociopath, you know? And Cookie gives you so much evidence to substantiate either claim that this author really leaves it up to the viewer to come up with their own interpretation. So because of that, there is just another layer added to the unpredictability of this entire story. It just blows my mind how amazing this is. It's a story of people being forced to face things that they cannot accept or comprehend. There's some overlap and commonalities and a contrast between Yoon Bum's current situation and Sang-woo's past, and the whole concept of a martyr. So a martyr is someone who, having no other choice but to suffer, manages to do something with his pain. Is this martyrship a contributor for the Stockholm syndrome that eventually befell Yoon Bum? Is that a possibility? Is that a thing that happened over here? And what purpose could there be in these doomed scenarios? Like, can something be done with the pain Yoon Bum experiences? And if not, then what kind of world would allow for this pointless and cruel violence to continue happening? Is there no ultimate meaning to life's suffering and whatnot? And at what point is a toxic individual a failure of society at large? And on the other hand, at what point should we judge them for their own actions? Also, for thriller fans, I should add that there's a genuinely interesting detective subplot. Yeah, just gonna throw that in there. Super good. Sunbae, I think, great character. Very genuinely thrilling detective procedural investigation. Like, the chapters of the detective are actually really engaging and interesting. And that character also is one that comes off as a very fully fleshed human being who fucks up, who makes mistakes, who jeopardizes things. And it just adds another layer of tension and how many various things this story tries to take on and succeeds at, which is everything. I just love this story so much. I just love the kind of horror that forces us to engage with the darkest parts of being human and in a way humbles us and brings us back down to earth. Extreme horror and horror that deals exclusively in the human realm is a reminder to us that darkness and cruelty are a very real thing and a very human thing. And this story explores the reasons why people get hurt and why hurt people hurt people. When a horror story manages to terrify me with this template, that's when I give it 5 stars. It forces us to confront the most uncomfortable truths about the human condition and the mere state of being a human being on planet Earth. This book reinforces my biggest belief in life, that the most horrifying things on this planet are other people. So yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Do share this video if you're a Killing Stalking fan. But yeah, I hope to see you in future videos, and as always, take care. I lose myself